So, okay, I'll tell you what, we are sharing the microphone today with Miss Eve and our first guest of the day, Mr. Maurice Wilson from the National Veterans Transition Services, also known as Reboot.
Good morning.
Okay, great. So tell us a little bit about Reboot. What is it that you do?
Well, good morning, everybody. Pleasure to be here. We, I guess in a word, help transition service members back into civilian life. And one way of looking at it is when you join the military, you go through boot camp. And boot camp is anywhere from 8 to 13 weeks of a transformation process. Transformation. Right. So you're being changed from the individual person to who you are to the military person that fits into the military environment. A lot of energy goes into that, and people get transformed. You know, once you graduate, you're like, that's it. But no one really transforms you coming back. There's no boot camp to bring you back. And so boot camp is people talk a lot about the physical aspect of it.
Right.
But there really is the mental aspect of it also. You're changing. You're becoming a different person. And that's necessary to serve in the military, fit into the culture. So when you take off the uniform, and I know this because I served for 26 years.
Oh, wow.
When you take off the uniform and you try to reestablish yourself back into civilian life, well, you have to reestablish your new identity. Who am I? What do I want to do? Mm-hmm. I no longer have the mission of the military. So you go through a lot of mental changes just getting out of the military.
So I'm going to shift gears on you.
Sure.
Why is Maurice has started a nonprofit organization to help transition veterans back into civilian life and do all these great things. Mm-hmm. Why?
Interesting story. So in 2009...
We love stories, and hopefully it's not another Walt Sigmuller story. Okay?
Yeah.
So in 2009, I was actually working for the Urban League here in San Diego in their workforce development department, and I had been there since I retired in 1998. But in 2009, I was introduced to an organization called the Call of Duty Endowment. And they make the video game Black Ops Call of Duty.
Oh, yeah.
And they were establishing a veteran group to help organizations like mine and others do their work, which is, help veterans get jobs. And so I became an advisory member of that organization. I'm actually still an advisory member of the Call of Duty Endowment. And our job was to vet out different organizations from around the country who were helping veterans get jobs and give them money. And Code still does that today. Right now we have a $5 million endowment that we're handing out to different organizations across the country. So while performing that function, I began to notice some interesting things about a lot of the organizations that we gave money to. And we always gave money to organizations that helped the veterans after they kind of sort of hit rock bottom. It's always building them up after the fact versus preventing things from happening. Instead of someone becoming unemployed, why not have a smooth transition from the military to a job? So I started looking around for organizations and then the system itself to see just what's being done. And at the time, we were still, as a country, running a program called the Transition Assistance Program, which it helps you understand some of your benefits, but it doesn't prepare you for the transition getting out. Again, as I said before, the transition getting out is more mental. So if someone's really talking to me mostly about a job, that's okay, but it's not helping me transition. And so as I looked around and I didn't see anyone do that, I decided, okay, why not start an organization that did that? Why not start a reverse boot camp that helps the individuals transition from the inside out? And I use that from my personal experience. When I retired in 1998, it took me about 8 years to figure out my new identity in terms of who I was.
8 years?
Oh, 8 years. It's a long process.
Wow.
And even though I retired as a E9, a Master Chief Hospital Corpsman, I had 2 degrees, one bachelor's in business, one master's in telecommunications systems management. I still didn't have my passion. I was sort of like a machine. I was a robot.
See, you mentioned something I want to tap into, and I don't mean to take you off focus too much, but how many of the people that you deal with that are transitioning from, let's say, one hitch in the military versus retirement?
It varies. I would say we generally see an average age of about 35. Okay. And so a person in an average age of 35 usually has done anywhere from 8 to 10 years or so, or something like that.
Right.
And so it's sort of like a bell curve.
Okay.
So those are people that have been in long enough to where they need a reboot.
Absolutely.
To transition back. Now, how do you do that?
Well, let me build on what you just said. Even if the person only has like a 4-year hitch, they still need a reboot, because you got to ask them the question, why did you join in the first place? And about 80% of most of the individuals will tell you, well, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, so I joined the military. So 4 years later, if you haven't figured it out, there's no answer there.
Right.
Okay, and you can actually have some people, such as myself and others, who can do 20 to 30 years, and still when they get out, you ask them, what are you going to do now? Gee, I don't know. I haven't figured that out. I've been focused on this mission all my career.
Right.
And most people tell me, why don't you just do what you did while you were in the military? Well, what we found through research is 80% of the individuals don't want to do the same thing on the outside that they did on the inside.
Interesting. You're listening to Close Up on San Diego Business here on KCBQ. Streaming live at AM1170theanswer.com. Give us a tweet at CloseUpSD. Email me at Barry@CloseUpSanDiego.com, or find our page on Facebook. We want to hear from you. I'm your host, Barry Waxler. Here are my co-host, Andrea Kay, Urban Maurice, and our guest is Maurice Wilson from Reboot. So you work with a lot of people. It's primarily people that have done a lot more than one hitch, and that means they're disconnected from civilian society for quite a while. And your goal is to reconnect them the right way.
The range is everyone, male, female, officer enlisted, military, retired, veteran, spouses as well.
Really?
So it doesn't really matter. Everybody in that whole what we call continuum needs a reboot.
Right.
And so what we do is Reboot is a 3-week-long process that helps the person look introspectively into who they are and what they want to be. We use some serious hard science that really helps them redefine themselves in 3 stages. Like the first stage is to help them identify who they are and control their self-talk. When you get out of the military, and we call it getting unplugged from the matrix, like in the movie The Matrix, where you get unplugged from the matrix, where you're being fed a lot of information, instructions, and orders. All of a sudden, one day, you're not getting any instructions, you're not getting any orders. And your mind is searching for answers, and it doesn't have it. And so it actually goes into a spiral. And so what we do is show the individuals how to manage and control their self-talk. And we really get very, very deep into the whole process of thinking, how that works. But the first week really helps them learn how to manage their thinking process there and calm down. It has a very calming effect. The second week, and it's designed to help them reestablish a identity of who you are.
An individual identity as opposed to being part of a unit.
Exactly.
With a chain of command that gives you the orders and the directions.
Right. Because, again, that's the military structure, is that you're not an individual, you're part of a unit. So in that first week, we're helping them return back to an individual state so they can start thinking on their own, and also reestablishing their own mission, which is the second week. So the second week actually helps them find their purpose and passion. Now,
I like how you call it their mission.
Absolutely. So in the military, you're mission oriented. So you're part of a team, you're mission oriented. And that mission is not your personal mission. It's the unit, the country's mission. But when you get out of the military, you have to establish your own personal mission tied to who you are, what you want to do, what's your passion. And so we spend a week actually helping them find the answers. All the answers are inside of them. And so we have the process in place that helps them bring it forward so they can actually see it and all of a sudden take control of their life from that point.
Wow. And then you got to transition them into then being their own general or their own commander-in-chief.
Absolutely.
Basically, to take control and make that mission happen.
You got to write your own orders, establish your own plan of the day. You have to become everything that you were not in the military. So we like to say 80% of what you do when you're in the military is externally controlled by others. Okay, so you're not driving your day-to-day life cycle.
Being part of society is tough. I know in my transition, which, we didn't have the opportunity for any transition services, you get disconnected. You get out of the military and you know. And you try to go back home the way it was, and it's not the same. It's not the same, and you have to change your language. You can't use all the acronyms or the foul words. It's a different a feeling. You're lost. You really are lost.
Before we run out of time, I want to talk about something that I think is important to a lot of businesses like yours. Okay, tell us how you're funded. How do you? Do you charge a fee for veterans to come in?
No, it's free for the veterans.
Okay.
We're a nonprofit, so we're privately funded by donations from organizations and individuals. I go out and I raise the funds. But for the veterans, for their families, it's totally free for them. Once they're in the program, they're in the program for life. And so we don't just kick them to the curb once they've gone through the 3-week process. We stick with them forever. We use the common vernaculum. We got your back. We got your six. And so we want them to know that we're always going to be there for them, no matter how long it takes for them to reintegrate successfully back into civilian life.
Okay, well, I'm gonna say this, and I'm just gonna say it straight out. You're one of our heroes, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna make an offer to you and this beautiful lady sitting right next to you. Okay, I know that doesn't come over well on the radio, but it does for me.
Andrea.
No. We were talking about you, Thelma.
Yes, you eat.
So what I want to do is get together with you guys and show you some of the things that we're building on to raise funds for nonprofits.
Nice.
And it ties back in directly to the employer groups that you're working with, Eve. And I think there's a beautiful connection for all this, because
it is.
Without the fundraising, you can't do what you do.
Precisely.
Right.
So let's see what we can do. I'm also going to make sure that you have all the content that you've just created from our radio show, so you can pass this out to a lot of the new veterans coming into our civilian society.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So
now, in terms of to piggyback onto the idea of fundraising, we got to talk about growth, because this should be happening everywhere across the nation.
You're absolutely right. In fact, we developed the model so that it could be expanded across the country. Right now, we're doing workshops in Michigan. We got a workshop coming up in Lansing, Michigan on the 27th.
Great.
We did a workshop in Detroit, Michigan back in February. We did 16 Vietnam era veterans that had been just living in this bubble for 30 some odd years. We got them out of that bubble, and they're moving forward into life. We've done the couple of workshops in Norfolk, Virginia, and now we're looking to take the program up to Seattle, Washington. We just finished a workshop actually in Los Angeles about 2 weeks ago. It was an all-female workshop up there. That's another focus area. The women experience is a lot different from the male experience. And so you cannot treat the two the same, and you have to uniquely bring the women in and work through their issues and get them to really change things on the inside picture so they can be successful. I could spend an hour just talking about the challenges that they're facing.
Yeah.
Hey, Maurice, do you handle disabled veterans, those veterans that are both physically and psychologically disabled?
We have them all. We have seen and unseen wounds go through the program, and the individual with the seen wounds, they have what I call a double jeopardy. They have to manage their disability, and then they have to manage their thinking about the disability, and then they have to manage their reintegration. So there's a lot of things going on upside. So we call it an inside game.
Yeah, well, we're running short on time, so real quickly, tell our listeners how they learn more about Reboot.
Simple. They can just come to our website, www.nvtsi.org. And if they're interested in supporting a veteran, it's only $2,500 to put an individual through the program, and we support them as long as they need us to support them.
Wow,
Great. That's fabulous.
Wonderful.
And we're going to be doing a lot of follow-up. I'm going to want you back because we want to tell your story a little bit more.
Love to. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
Hey, this is Close Up on San Diego Business here on KCBQ, streaming live at AM1170, theanswer.com. Send us a tweet at CloseUpSD or just find us on Facebook. You can always email me at barry@closeupsandiego.com. Let me know what you think. I'm your host, Barry Waxler, and we will be right back after a word from our sponsors.